Our next speaker for the day, when I read his profile, it makes for very interesting reading. A Bachelor of Science and an MBA, officer of the US Navy with a nuclear submarine. So, I mean, when you work in a Navy or Army, you learn a lot more about organization and planning than we could at PMI. And therefore, PMI took him. He has over 35 years of experience, and it's my pleasure to welcome Craig Killough once again to India. Craig, welcome back. Craig Killough is currently the VP of Organization Markets for PMI, and in his role, primarily deals with building a better relationship with organizations and promoting the value of projects, programs, and portfolios with organizations. Today, he's going to talk to us about how we can realize the opportunity that come built in when we face uncertainties. Craig, good to have you back.
Good afternoon. How's everybody feeling? It's a wonderful day, and it's a great opportunity that I see to spend a few minutes with you and talk to you about my perception and my understanding of the condition of project management around the world. My current job is, as we stated, I'm the Vice President of the Organization Markets Group within PMI Global Operations Center. That means that I am primarily responsible for the relationship that PMI has with public sector, governments, SOEs, PSUs, and private sector organizations. In that role, I have the opportunity to travel around the world, speak to groups like this, speak to leaders of country major departments and ministries, also to talk to leaders of project management capabilities within major corporations. So we'll start with a story. I graduated from university, that was the U.S. Naval Academy in the United States, in 1972. So I've had 41 years experience at managing projects and programs. My first job was as a division officer on a nuclear fast attack submarine. And from day one, I was managing small projects. At that time in 1972, PMI was 4 years old. It had been founded in 1968 by a small group of volunteers that were doing this thing, or managing this thing called projects, that they believed did not receive the recognition it needed within the business community. At that time, project management was considered a collateral duty of something that you would do in addition to your other business responsibilities. So in 1972, project management was not recognized as a role or a profession. Let's fast forward a little bit to 1997. 1997, PMI is now almost 30 years old. And the total number of PMPs and members of PMI total less than 30,000 people. The PMP was 13 years old. So we were still struggling with that recognition globally, and in reality, in 1997, the PMP was only present in a handful of countries, and predominantly in the United States and Canada. Let's fast forward to 2013. 2013, that number I mentioned that was 30,000 in 1997 is close to 1 million. So what has happened between 1997 and 2013 to grow this profession in such a magnitude? We're going to talk about that in the next 30 plus minutes and talk a little bit about what we see as the future, the present, and why I talk about seizing opportunity in the face of uncertainty. So, what's significant? It's significant that 22% of the global economy is generated through the completion of capital projects. An equal amount is also completed through non-capital projects such as information technology, product and service development, and generation of intellectual property. To put that in perspective, 44% of today's global economy is about 32 trillion US dollars. What else is significant? The recent released 2013 PMI Pulse of the Profession says that on the average, only 62% of projects meet the goals that were set for that project. And by goals, we mean that the projects were completed within scope, within budget, and they meet the original business intent. 62%, that's the average. The highest performing companies or organizations do that 80% of the time. But the problem is that those high-performing companies only represent 8% of the populations we examined. So 8% of organizations complete their project within scope, within budget, and meeting original business intent 80% of the time. What is depressing to me is that the other side of the coin, the 32% of the projects that don't meet one of those or all of those three criteria. What is even more depressing is that 17% of all projects are complete failures. So if you go and look at the previous slide and recognize that $32 trillion are involved in generating the world's global product through the execution of projects, do the math. 17% of those projects are complete failure. So you're probably wondering, okay, so why is he making a speech about opportunity and uncertainty when he's giving us all these depressing numbers? Well, I think I'm going to tell you today that I'm very optimistic about the future of project management around the world, and we'll spend a little bit of time talking about why I'm so optimistic. So this cloud represents just some of the items that comprise the project management environment around the world today. It is a number of issues that project managers, program managers, and portfolio managers face every day. And this environment comprises the environment in which you live and work. So if you take a moment and look at this quotation. Quotation is by George Bernard Shaw. He is a famous Irish poet and author. But if you look at that quote, I believe that quote embodies the spirit and the attitude of project managers. Project managers deal with what will be. You constantly are managing or working within a change environment. You are executing projects and programs of your organizations that create the things that are representative of the future. So they aren't existent today. So you're not wandering around sitting on your hands saying, this is it, and asking why, but you are asking why not. and you are the enablers of why not. This slide represents the logos of several companies. There are a number of companies on this slide. Every one of them is a member of our Global Executive Council, PMI's Global Executive Council. The 4 companies on the top you might recognize as having their homes in India. The other companies are global organizations that represent a significant amount of business or presence within India. The reason why I put these logos up here is that these organizations and their other member organizations in the Global Executive Council are committed to project, program, and portfolio management excellence. They've joined this group of companies called the Global Executive Council to provide the opportunity to exchange ideas, exchange practices, exchange war stories and problems, and talk about how we can get better at executing the strategy of the company. Remember the slide there, 10 to 15% is about developing the vision or the strategy, but 90% is in what I call the work, the implementation. And you are the implementers, you are the enablers. You're the enablers of strategy. These organizations represent dedication to the importance of the project management profession and what we call organizational project management in general. Organizational project management is the culture of project management within the company. It is the attitude of the individuals with respect to where projects are prioritized or their priority in relationship to company operations. And these organizations are ones that recognize that project, program, and portfolio management are a strategic competency that the company and the organization needs to have in order to survive. Because any organization that stands still will not survive. And how do organizations go forward? Through the execution of strategy, strategy through initiatives, and initiatives are projects and programs. Additionally, recent PwC study reveals that 70% of the organizations that were part of the research surveyed across 26 countries stated that they had some kind of a project improvement initiative underway within the company. That's pretty encouraging. So 70% of the organizations polled by PwC in this research admitted they are engaging in activities that are improving their capability to execute their portfolio. Another encouraging point. As part of my job, I said I go around and visit, and we have interaction with, and we have government relations activities in a number of countries and groups of countries around the world. Let me take a few moments to cite some examples of what's happening inside a couple of organizations or a couple of countries that you might be interested in. In the European Union, they have something called the General Regulation on Cohesion Funds. That's the process with which the European Union gathers their money in contributing funds and distributes it to the member countries for economic development and structural development. The vast majority of those organizations receiving cohesion or structural funds are organizations or countries that are needing a significant upgrade in infrastructure. And in the European Union, those countries happen to be part of those unions that were part of the former Soviet republics or affiliated with or satellite countries of the former Soviet republics. So, as you might assume, the infrastructure and the ability of those organizations to sustain large-scale infrastructure and economic development is limited in their capacity to execute the projects and programs required to do so. So they have very limited project management capability. So we have been able to work with the European Union and with the members of the European Parliament to include in the requirements for the budget from 2014 to 2020 provisions that require the beneficiary countries to develop and improve the capacity to execute projects and programs within their country before they receive the funds. So what does that mean? That means that in Romania, in Poland, and now Croatia, who just is the newest member, you're going to see a significant effort to develop the capacity in those countries to execute projects and programs and improve the infrastructure and help to bolster the economy. In the United Kingdom, they recently have a civil service reform plan. And there are, among other provisions of the civil service reform plan, are some significant decisions and policies around how they execute and monitor their major programs. They created an office or an authority within the Cabinet Office. The Cabinet Office is that group, is that organization that reports to the Prime Minister. And they call it the Major Projects Authority. And the MPA is tasked with monitoring and enabling the top 200 most significant projects that are being sponsored or funded by the UK government. They have created what's called a Major Projects Leadership Academy. And the Leadership Academy has two functions. Number one, it is a place where the senior responsible officers, i.e. the major stakeholders and the executive sponsors of these projects, receive training in how to be a sponsor, an executive sponsor. And the operative word here is active executive sponsor, not passive executive sponsor. How many of you would like to have an active and involved executive sponsor? I hope everybody raises their hand, because if you don't have an active and participative sponsor, it makes your job harder. The second objective is the Major Projects Authority is to enable the development and the advancement of the capabilities for program and project managers to manage large-scale projects. And they also have revised or taken efforts to better define the career path for program and project managers within the government to help on the retention rate. So another significant decision in the UK. In Australia, the strategic priorities of the Australian government are that they need to expand Australia's capacity to execute their multiple or their large-scale infrastructure plan for the future. So part of doing that is that they've actually enabled policy to liberalize the immigration laws, which in Australia are very, very strict. So to import more project management talent, because they realize in the time frame they need to complete these projects, they're not going to be able to grow organically the capability they need within the country to manage and enable these projects. And they also are enabling or encouraging the member states, or the states that comprise the union in Australia, to establish what's called PMOs, what we might call PMOs within the states, to be able to monitor and execute these projects. As the federal government funds them, the states are the ones that implement the infrastructure projects. In the United States, we recently passed major legislation that's called the Federal Information Technology Acquisition Reform Act, or FITARA for short. And what is significant about FITARA from the project management perspective is that it identifies career paths for project and program managers. It identifies a competency framework for them. But most importantly, it elevates the senior program managers to a level what's called in the U.S. federal government as senior executive service. That is a level of compensation that's outside the normal civil service band, so it allows these organizations to pay senior, highly experienced program managers competitively with the private sector, which is an extremely important aspect of retention. Among other things, it has a lot of infrastructure and consolidation of data centers and movement to the cloud and other technology advances for the information technology support in the United States. But most significantly, it's the fact that they realize that talent management is an issue and they're doing something about it. In India, we've all talked about the 12th five-year plan. I don't know if you realize it, but this is very, very significant. And a lot of times we talk in India about the will of the politicians. This is a demonstration of the will of the politicians and the recognition that we've got in India a $500 billion goal for investing in infrastructure in the future. Somebody's got to take responsibility for helping to develop the capacity to effectively build and enhance and upgrade the infrastructure for India for it to grow in the future and to meet the future goals of the economies. So in the 12th five-year plan, there's a recognition that project management is a learnable skill and that it should be developed as a competency across the country. The Planning Commission, as you know, is the one that develops this five-year plan. But what is significant about a first step that the Planning Commission has done is they've created the India Backbone Implementation Network, or IBIN. And it's basically up here on one of our sponsors, right? The IBIN is an enabler. The Planning Commission is trying to enable the achievement of this objective by creating this backbone that joins need with solution, combining and bringing together those that are in need of project management, program management capabilities and talents with people or organizations that can provide or help build that solution, among other things. Additionally, project management is recognized now by the civil service agencies and hopefully the federal government has suggested to the state agencies that project management familiarization training or orientation training should be part of the curriculum of all newly entering people in the civil service in India and hopefully the states in their civil service. So everybody will get an understanding or at least familiarization with an orientation around the importance of project management, the basic elements of project management, and why it's important. So there's numerous other examples. I could spend 2 hours up here talking to you about initiatives that are occurring in Latin America and Brazil, in the Arabian Gulf, in sub-Saharan Africa, throughout Europe. We already talked a little bit about Europe, but it's happening everywhere. So the next thing is that, so what's happening with this profession? Is it really growing? So PMI performs what we call a global project management census every 5-ish so years. The last census we performed was in 2008, and the global project management population was around 20 million. That's 20 million practitioners that are in various categories. Ones who are dedicated professionals that's their primary job, that's their only job. It also includes project managers that are recognize themselves as having another profession, like they're a civil engineer, but they're a senior civil engineer in a department where they are managing some of the major activities of that civil engineering department. But the numbers striking in what we came out with. We had, our analysis was so involved this time, we asked the Economist Information Unit to do a third-party independent assessment of our methodology. So fortunately, they came back and said that it was, quote, you read the bold print there. So the Economist says it is a viable methodology, sufficiently robust for the subject at hand. So what is it? So basically, we've got a population of 51 million practitioners around the world. From 2008 to 2013, we've 2.5 times. So this is encouraging and depressing at the same time. The issue is that there's not enough trained practitioners. Here's the global representation of how that lays out in Asia, in the Asia-Pacific region. China, as you might guess, is the largest number, but India is the second largest with 5.4 million practitioners. And the 5 largest organizations or countries in that analysis comprised 57% of that 51 million number. What is also important and germane is that a study by the Anderson Economic Group in 2010, since then the study's been updated and it's not only 10.0 or 1.064 million a year, but it's now around 1.2. But that's the number of jobs that are created globally in the project management community between 2010 and 2020. 397,000 of them are created in India. 40-ish% of the new jobs created between 2010 and 2020 are created in India. So why am I a little bit depressed about that? Well, I'm depressed about that because I stated that in PMI, we are affiliated with either membership or credential holders of about 1 million people. We have 2.5 million registered users on PMI.org. If you take all of the credentials, all of the certifications, and put them all together, numbers, IPMA, APM, all of the different project management groups around the world, around certified people, you're not going to come up with more than 5 million. So that's 5 million out of 51 million people who are serious about this profession. The rest of the people, I would say, if conservatively maybe another, if we're even saying another 5 million are trained, okay? That's 10 million out of 50 million who have any idea what they're doing. And so we ask why the average is 62%. So the issue is that we've got all these jobs. They're all out there, but a lot of those jobs are probably not as a job that you would want, maybe not a good paying job. But of those 51 million, there's some really good jobs. And The fact that you are here today, the fact that you are involved with this profession and are interested in developing your career, developing your capability and talents by communing with other project managers, networking, gaining knowledge and experience in your companies. That means that you are the top of that group, that you should continue. If you continue and aspire to increase your knowledge and skills and experience, that you will continue to have the option to be able to achieve and get those good premier jobs. So what's it going to take? The issue is also that the world's population is aging. This is a graph of from the UN Council on the World's Population, and it represents the percentage of the population in that country or group of countries that is of retirement age. Don't need to concentrate on the numbers, but if you notice, every single one of them is going up. So over time, between now and, what's that, 2050? The world's population is more and more people are becoming of retirement age. What does that mean? That means that more people are eligible for retirement than are entering at the bottom. Because if there were more people entering at the bottom, that curve would go that way. So the issue is that in the next 8 years, 40% of our current project management workforce will be eligible to retire. It doesn't mean they're going to retire. I'm eligible to retire. I'm standing in front of you. I'm having too much fun to retire. But that's a fact that organizations deal with. So the competition for qualified talent is going to be fierce. So what do you as a project manager need to do to continue to enhance your skills going forward? Well, we have what's called the project manager skills in the talent triangle. And this is where we have, through our research and our periodic update to the role of the project manager as defined with for defining our PMP requirements on our PMP exam, is that the project manager is now required to develop skills, knowledge, and abilities in 3 primary areas. Okay, the first area is what we all call traditional project management capabilities. Okay, those things around managing the project that are defined by your methodologies in your companies. Fortunately, these talents are trainable. However, good people that know how to do this well are harder to find. But companies realize that this subject is trainable. The next area is leadership skills. In reality, you all realize that you're not managing a project, you're leading people in completing a project. And your ability to manage those and lead those people in the efforts required for that project's success are critical to be able to complete it. So in the time frame that I have been managing projects, we've come from recognizing that a project manager was fundamentally a technician who was able to be able to pay attention to the numbers and the schedule and making sure we're within the scope, to a project leader that has technical skills. In the future, we're going to see more and more CEOs with backgrounds in project management. We're seeing trends in that right now. The third element of that triangle is the ability to understand where this project fits in the scheme of the company. To have the fundamental business acumen to understand how this project fits, where it is in the strategy of the organization, and to be able to communicate that to the members of your project team in order to get everybody on board. So some of you out there who are the older and more experienced project managers might say, heck, I haven't had any training in leadership. What am I going to do? Well, rest assured, because you're in this room, because you have been successful in your career to manage projects and advance your career, that through experience in managing projects of bigger size, higher complexity, you have developed those skills of leadership and people interaction by experience. Because in reality, leadership is not something you sit down in a classroom and have somebody come up to you and say, hey, here's how you do it. It's experiential. You learn with working with mentors. You learn from the people who are the senior project managers over time. You learn and you gain that experience. So have confidence in the fact that you have that experience and but it's your responsibility to pass it on. To mentor those in your organization who are junior to you. Make yourself relevant. As Deep said, make yourself relevant to the organization. Additionally, Deep mentioned about getting people in your organization or in your project team that might not be exactly like you. Some of you might have the luxury of selecting members for your project teams. So surround yourself with a variation and degree of talent. I like to say that I strive to be not the smartest person in the room. Now, what I mean by that is that I will strive to bring people to my organization that have the confidence to provide their input, provide suggestion without relying or deferring to me as the smartest one in the room. Some organizations that have already recognized this. Here's an example of GE Power and Water and their project manager capability model. You see it clearly states technical project management skills, leadership, and business acumen. So, the 2013 project management environment. You're all working within it now. I see opportunity there, opportunity for you to excel, to get those good jobs that are out there, to mentor people, to create and spread the capability throughout your organization. Encourage younger members of your organization to become project managers. Because we have a serious problem with talent management and talent development. So if you go away from this presentation with one thing today, it's the fact that you should be confident in the issue that you are participating with a group of practitioners that realizes that it's a continuous process to upgrade your capability and talent. That attending things like this are beneficial to you in the advancement of your career, in making yourself relevant in your organization, and in carrying or improving your capability of your organization to execute. So I ask you, are you ready? I don't think you are. Are you ready? Yes. I think you're ready. I think you're capable. I think you need to pass the word, you need to pass your capability and your experience on to others so that we can meet that challenge in the next 10 to 20 years. Because I believe that through that success, more and more organizations are going to realize that they need to get better at this. They want to be one of those 8%. Let's make the ones that are exceeding greater than 80%, let's make that 70% of the responding organizations. Are you ready? Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. That was very enlightening. When you talked about not being the smartest person in the room, I realized I achieved one goal from what I learned in the conference. I'm there already. the huge amount of opportunities that you talked about, the one quote that kept popping through my mind throughout was what Thomas Alva Edison has said: opportunity is often missed because it's dressed in overalls and comes disguised as work. So we have a lot of work to do. I now request Tejas Surat, the region mentor for Region 11 in Asia Pacific, to come and give a memento to Craig.